First and foremost, want to give honor and praise unto Yah, the creator of heaven and earth. We're going to conclude also and continue at the same time, brothers and sisters, in the part two, the Hebrew Israelite and the Kemetic brothers' understanding and debates, presented by Hebrew Israelite brother himself. Want to go into the book of Josephus. All right, we're going to use some references right about now. Josephus, we're going to go in page 75 of this, and that is to say, Antiquities of the Jews, book 2, chapter 7, in the ending of verse 5. And it says this: by doing nothing that would be common to them with the Egyptians, for the Egyptians are prohibited to meddle with feeding of sheep. Now, I wanted to sit there and have that read because it distinctly says in the book of Josephus that it was a prohibition of the people in Egypt to deal with those who deal with sheep. All right. Now, this is why you may see even sometimes today, brothers into the Kemetic science try to snap or disrespect or insult Israelites by saying, oh, look, those are just shepherds. Those are sheep people. And some people find that to be humorous, but in actuality, when you go where you see on this map here, like in Egypt, if it continued to go further west, you would see where the Fulani and the Gambia, as well as they say the Hausa that live in northern Niger, they still deal with livestock and sheep and goats and oxen and so forth and so on. Whereas the Egyptian culture frowned on such a thing. So, but there are people, black people in Africa to this day, that actually still deal with animals and livestock and so forth, and it's lucrative. So it's actually disrespectful, brothers and sisters, to try to snap on a man's livelihood. All right. Now, another point to get into this particular subject matter is that if we go, brothers and sisters, into the scriptures, we can go to the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 15, verse 14. We are in the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 15, verse 14. One of the things I wanted to point out also, while I get there, brothers and sisters, is that the people of the children of Israel descended from the people who were here. The people who were here were the people that was in the land of Sumer, later Babylon. All right? So now let's continue on in this right here. 1 Samuel 15, we are in verse 14 and 15. And it says this: and Samuel said, what meaneth then this bleating of the sheep in mine ears, and the lowing of oxen which I hear? And Shaul said, they had brought them from the Amal queen, the Amalekites. For the people spared the best of the sheep and of the oxen to sacrifice unto Yah thy God, and the rest we have utterly destroyed. Brothers and sisters, that just goes to show you that it was a custom among the people of the Hebrews to be shepherds. As a matter of fact, when you go into the book of Ezekiel, it is called being a shepherd when you're leading the people. When you go into Numbers 27, the prophet Moses said, may Yah, who is the spirit of all flesh, set a man over the congregation, because the children of Israel without a leader is like sheep without shepherd. And so therefore you can see how the correlation of the culture related even with nature itself in that aspect of animals. So now, one of the things to be noted and understood is that it was against the Egyptian culture to deal with shepherds. All right. Point in getting into that is because the cultures were different. Why am I going there? Because some brothers and sisters try to say that the Israelites got their cultures from the Egyptians. But you just read an actual quote from the record in Josephus as that the Egyptians did not deal with those who meddled with sheep. We're going to get into more of the differences as this presentation here goes on. All right. Now, wanted to get into a little bit of something about the issue of Hebrew itself. All right. I have the Zondervan Pictorial Encyclopedia of the Bible. All right. And in volume 3, that is, yep, we are in page 335. Page 335 of this. And it says the following. Remember, in doing this studies, you have to have an open mind. All right. We can't deal and grow having tunnel vision. That's not going to be prosperous. It says this: archaeological excavations in the Near East have illuminated and supplemented biblical history, which is largely Israelite history. The records and inscriptions of the Egyptians, Assyrians, Babylonians, Persians, Greeks, and Romans give a background for and sometimes deal directly with the history of Israel. Now, to let that be known and understood, you have the historian Tacitus who speaks about the Israelites. That will be discussed in another time. You have the Greek historian named Herodotus, who they try to claim by saying he never spoke about the Jews or the Israelites, but he spoke about the people of Tyre. And if you understand anything about history, the people of Tyre were more on record of other nations than the people of the Israelites. Point in getting into that is because the people of Tyre, also known as the Zidonians, were the same ones who started the place called Carthage. And the Carthaginians, when you deal with Hannibal, he commanded his army in Hebrew. When you go into the book of Babylon and Timbuktu by Rudolf Windsor. So you have elements and understandings that the people of Carthage were both Hamite Canaanites as well as the Shemitic Israelites that ruled in the land called Carthage. Okay, now getting back into this subject here, we're going to continue on in this, but we're going to go into the next page. Right? Says this. The Apiru are mentioned in Egyptian records as Asiatic slaves who worked as builders, as did the Hebrews, for pharaohs in the 18th dynasty. That is to say, for example, Amenhotep II. And in the 19th dynasty, example such as Ramses II. The word Apiru may be related to Ibri, Hebrew, and some of these Apiru may have been the Hebrews of the Bible. So, one of the things to let it be known and understood is that the people called the Apiru were there during the time of the Israelites in Egypt and actually in history after the Israelites left the land of Egypt. You actually still have the people who were called the people of the Habiru or the Hebrews. All right, now wanted to get into another secular source concerning this. Now, some people, I want to state to the brothers and sisters who are Hebrew Israelites, the reason why I go into this book, that book, and the next book is just to show, not that we as Israelites need it for us, but it's just to show that some people try to say, well, Israelites only read the Bible. You're incorrect when you state that. Israelites do not only just read the Bible for a source of information. Let that be understood. Stop lying on the children of Israel here by saying, as of this moment, this being this time now, November 14th, 2014, let it be known that Israelites don't only just read the Bible for a source. And if we did, we still, no offense intended to anybody, not to sound arrogant, we don't have to sit there and cater to the next man's understanding of where our sources come from. Our strength comes from Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, the Most High, the creator of heaven and earth. It does not come from debating. It does not come from the understanding of having to prove something to the next man. Now, the point in going over this is, as the Torah says in in Deuteronomy 11, it distinctly says that the Most High did these things for Israel in the sight of the nations. So we wanted to show where the Israelites are written about inside of the records of these other nations. All right, now, when you go into the next source I would like to get into is a book called Biblical Archaeology. And on page 258 of this book, under the subtitle of Egypt, we see this. The period from 1500 to 1200 BCE was marked by an increase of diplomatic and political activity on a scale previously unknown in the ancient world. Egypt no longer could exist in splendid isolation, for centers of power were developing in Asia. The Hittites in Anatolia, Mitanni on the middle Euphrates, Assyria and northern Mesopotamia, Babylon to the south, meaning to the south of Assyria, and a conglomerate of city-states in Syro-Palestine. It was also a period marked by the mass migration of ethnic groups, Amorites, Canaanites, Sea peoples, and in Palestine, an increasing numbers of an ethno-social group called the Hapiru, Hapiru. Now, I wanted to go and explains something according to the same author in this book here about these people. And it says this: attempts to identify the Habiru mentioned in the Amarna documents with the Israelites of the Exodus, however, seems to be ill-founded. Here we go, though. The Hebrews of the Old Testament may have been Habiru, but not all Habiru were biblical Hebrews. Most often, the designation Hebrew in the Bible is applied to Israelites by outsiders, or by Israelites speaking of himself or of his people to a foreigner. It does seem probable, nevertheless, that elements of native Canaanite Habiru amalgamated themselves with the invading Israelites during the conquest, swelling the number of the mixed company who had joined the descendants of the patriarchs in the Exodus. Now, one of the things concerning this matter I have wanted to point out is that according to the subtitle of Egypt, it distinctly right in there speaks about how the people of the Canaanites and the people of the Israelites, when the Israelites went into the land of Canaan, were considered both to be the Hapiru or the Abiru of those people. So that right there is something that has to be noted and documented and well presented. All right, now I like to go over another subject. Right, I'm not actually going to sit there and read every note that I have concerning this matter right here. But I wanted to go over something that I wrote some time ago concerning this matter. And that is the fact that the Torah does not come out of Ma'at, as some people have stated. Some of their greatest scholars have stated it. You know, no names have to be mentioned. We already know those who are familiar with this subject. Torah does not come from Ma'at. This should be understandable, but such is not the case. Previously, we went over the fact that Israel, the land, and the people are not from Egypt. The reasons for such come from geographic and spiritual reasons. In this presentation, we will go over the fact that some speak of the same premise. Tacitus in his writings state the following: many again say that they, the Jews, are a race of Ethiopian origin, who in the time of King Cepheus were driven by fear and hatred of their neighbors to search for a new dwelling place. This is in the writings of Tacitus, book 5, verse 2. Tacitus states further in his writings: Moses, wishing to secure future authority over the nation, gave them, the Israelites, a novel form of worship, opposed to all practiced by other men. Things that are sacred with the Romans, with the Jews, have no sanctity, while the Jews allow with us the Romans is forbidden. The Jews slay the ram, seemingly in derision of Hammon, and they sacrifice the ox, because the Egyptians worship it as Apis. They abstain from swine's flesh in consideration of what they suffered when they were infected with leprosy, to which this animal is liable. By their frequent fasts, they still bear witness to the long hunger of former days, and the Jewish bread made without leaven is retained as a memorial of their hurried season of corn. We are told that the rest of the seventh day was adopted because it brought with them a termination of their toils. After a while, the charm of indolence beguiled them, the Israelites, into giving the seventh year also to inaction. Quite different is the Jews about things that are divine. The Egyptians worship many animals and images of monstrous form. The Jews have a purely conception of God as one in essence. They call those profane, which make representation of God in human shape or perishable materials. They believe that God is to be supreme and eternal, neither capable of representation or decay. They therefore do not allow any images in their cities, much less in their temples. So, brothers and sisters, that right there is a record left from Tacitus speaking about the differences between the Israelite culture, which he referred to as Jew, another subject, and that of the Egyptians. Let us understand that the culture of Israel and Egypt are different. When you look at the pictures of the Egyptian men, be they priests or otherwise, you see that their hair is shaved. Some state that this is due to the Egyptians viewing hair on them as being dirty. To each their own. This is in sharp contrast, however, with the culture of Israel. Reference about that is in Leviticus chapter 21, where it says the priests were not supposed to make baldness upon their head. Yet we see in the temples of Egypt, such as from Karnak and from Medinet Habu, we see that their priests are shaved. In Jeremiah chapter 7, verse 29, it distinctly says, cut off the hair and cast it from thee, and take up lamentation, for the Most High have rejected the generation of his wrath. This shows that having a shaved head in the culture of Israel is viewed as a negative thing and not a way of being clean. In the prophetic book of Daniel, chapter 7, verse 9, we see that one who was of the Ancient of Days did sit, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. Obviously, this image is not one of a bald person we see in the artwork of the Egyptians. The priests also in the future of Israel will not have bald heads upon themselves, according to Ezekiel 44, verse 20. The point in going over that particular part is because the culture of the Israelites and the culture of the Egyptians is different. The geography, the land, the climate, the sacred days, the understanding of who God is different between Israel and Egypt. Shalom.